We're a group of GenXers who became aware of our neurodiversity later in life. Join us as we share stories, interesting topics, and talk to special guests. Welcome to Season 2 of This Is How My Brain Works. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of This Is How My Brain Works. I am joined by Krista Gano and Jason Rudofsky. Sarah Hines is on assignment. We have been bantering for a few minutes here, and we decided that it might be interesting to discuss in a little more detail about a neurodivergent diagnosis. And there's a lot of news around neurodivergence and why are so many people, why are we discovering so many more people are neurodivergent? There are all these diagnoses. Well, there's a lot more scientific research out there on how the brain works, neuroscience and so on. And I think I can speak for my group in saying that's probably why you hear about more of it. But what we're going to kind of delve into today a little bit is a diagnosis. Is it beneficial or harmful? And it says in this, like a little blurb would be, depending on individual circumstances and needs, it can offer access to support services and a better understanding of oneself, which I think is the biggest thing, benefit. But it can also lead to stigmatization or feelings of otherness. And I guess to expand on that, either the otherness, maybe even does it give you permission to maybe act a certain way or neglect certain things or deny certain things, or does it sometimes, I think, or does it inhibit you from thriving in a certain way if you get some sort of diagnosis? So we're just gonna, that's kind of broad and loose, but hopefully we'll bring some interesting things into the conversation here.
So you brought up two things, and first is the whole diagnosis piece of the puzzle. And I think that this thing shifts over time, right? Because, for example, my oldest is autistic. However, also really high IQ. So in that twice exceptional gifted space. And so when we were coming through school, we were advised not to disclose or to get him formally diagnosed autistic because the stigma of that would actually potentially hold them back in school. So, because there's this idea of what autism
Quick question.
looks like.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
Teacher and student both did not know. Only you knew?
No. Diagnosed with sensory integration disorder, because there's no way that we could have, listen, there was sensory things we had to sort out. But the piece of the puzzle was the word at the time. Remember, this was 15 years ago. So at the time, autism, that diagnosis was pushing kids in a path with their IEPs to not actually be challenged, but to be sort of put in a room and not dealt with.
Yes.
So,
yes.
So we were advised for educational purposes to not pursue that diagnosis and to keep it at sensory integration disorder so that we could continue to support the needs, the sensory needs that were happening throughout, but not put them in a box around the educational needs. And so I will say that piece of the puzzle around that diagnosis piece. And then the other thing is I just want to say that the amount of noise and navigating the world and trying to figure out if we're doing right or wrong, or if we're okay or we're bad, or if we said something right or wrong, that happens in our heads as neurodivergent people. There's no room for me to try to act poorly on purpose, to try to make this diagnosis work for me. Like that is such a neurotypical idea that they've got so much space in their brains that they could try to utilize a diagnosis to their advantage somehow. Like that's like the amount of flood, like me trying to like be like, ooh, I get to be flooded because it feels so awesome, and I get to be dysregulated and have an excuse. Like
Yeah.
those things feel horrible. Like the idea that we do that, like we do it because it's
Absolutely.
fun,
But
crazy. Me.
could it be an excuse as far as like, I'm sorry I'm late, I have ADHD, or I'm sorry I forgot to do that, I have ADHD, or sorry I got emotional, I have like just kind of I have
Where you
so
say excuse, where you say tomato, where you say excuse, I say reason to work through.
well, this is a real thing. I mean, I think a lot of ADHD, ADHD, autism. I mean, when you the especially in a couple, like in a marriage or in a partnership, um, that can be a real thing. I mean, I'm speaking
Sure.
to this, intimately as far as like, being blamed for something or being like, I guess criticize and maybe this is my sensitivity, but feeling criticized or judged in certain ways because of like these things and like I'm using it as a crutch or as an excuse. Oh, that's just the ADHD. I mean, I know OCD gets like, oh, I'm just OCD. It kind of people use that
But
in a
when you say that, Michael, or that comes up for you, or it's the ADHD, like sometimes when this will probably end up in therapy. My son will probably end up in therapy someday around this. But sometimes he'll do something and I'll go, "Hey ADHD, let's get back on track." And it's just and it's not really me making fun of him because that's not what it is. It's sort of like acknowledging we're in a cycle right now that we need to like bump out of.
yeah,
And I think he probably takes it well from me because I too am ADHD. So
yeah,
it's one thing
yeah.
when it's like, one bumping against the other. But I guess my question to you is like when those things happen, when you're late because you lost track of time, or when these real world things that happen to you, then the way your brain functions, and you don't hit the mark of a neurotypical expectation, or a societal expectation. Is it the ADHD?
Well, I
Or
mean,
are you
if you
just trying to
look
be a crappy person?
right, so and that is a really that is I think possibly at the crux of this because there's a Mel Robbins
Wait,
episode where she had
explain
this.
that again. Explain that again a little slower, because guess what? My brain does not work in a way that can digest that so quickly. And if you could use terms within the
I love it.
50 main
I'm saying,
English
Jason,
words,
when you have those moments that are what you like, you lose the keys, you
right?
do it for the hundredth time or whatever, is that an excuse or is that real? Because for someone else to come at you and say you're just using the excuse of ADHD to be irresponsible isn't the truth. It's real for you. And so who's wrong in that
You
situation?
know what? I'll tell you one thing. I never say, "Oh, that's my ADHD." I usually am like, "Well, that's just how my brain works," or "My brain doesn't work like that."
Yeah.
This is how my brain works, or my brain doesn't work like that. And I've mentioned that a lot recently, whether at home or at work, when the overwhelm comes and maybe or I don't have the motivation to do something, I don't use anything as an excuse. I'll do it. Um, but everyone knows at work, especially, I lose things a lot.
But
And
Jason, what I'm saying is that
but I don't use it.
not an
I
excuse.
no, not an excuse at all.
It's the way your brain works. I
It's
mean,
the way my brain works.
Yeah.
And then if flooded or if I'm a little more comfortable with just saying, especially with around people who know about how we operate, it's a lot easier to kind of jokingly say, "Oh, it's my ADHD," or "It's that's how my brain works," and you kind of giggle about it. That's kind of how it is for me right now, but I never use it as an excuse. And never as an excuse. It is real. You're exactly right.
But I also think that what Michael's probably coming around to is that for the neurotypical or for the person outside, it seems like they're excuses, which I would say is how do I say this? Is I heard this great thing the other day, and it does flip around that it's like, I can no longer communicate for your comfort.
Hmm.
Right. So this idea of like the neurotypical, like I cannot communicate as a neurodivergent for the comfort of neurotypicals. I have to be able to have myself in there. And that's what it feels like, is that again, the neurotypical saying my expectations are X, Y, and Z. And if you don't meet them, it's an excuse.
Yeah.
And that to me feels incredibly selfish and unfair. So,
I
And
yeah.
them not recognizing, what it is like to
well, they
have
can't
being
because they're not in our
neurospicy. They have
brains.
no idea.
Yeah,
And I
because they're
think
not.
that's really where it gets dangerous in a relationship because resentment starts poking its head, rearing its head, right? It's like because I've told you that I'm doing my best, or I tried, and you're not really giving me any grace, or you're not giving me any compassion around this thing. It is more like we'll figure it out. And I think there's some resentment that can start happening. I think before,
How much of that is you, not you in particular, but how much of that is a person absorbing that information and taking it in through a filter that's like defensive,
yeah,
being felt like they're blamed. So immediately it's like, you don't know how I feel. Like your embarrassment by not finishing a chicken coop, say, on a very base level, or putting together a Lego set because you lost pieces, because you did something, you whatever the case is, the embarrassment of it sometimes it's all you can see, it's all you can understand. So if someone's saying something to you, you're taking it immediately in a defensive, and I do that. I
But
take it in, and I'm just not, I don't know.
But here's what the question I would ask. It's like, listen, we all have stuff. Everybody has
Right.
stuff, whether you're neurotypical, neurodivergent, we all trauma, you've got post-traumatic stuff going on. We all have stuff. And
You
so
like coconut? I don't. I
I
mean,
guess
whatever it is.
my question would be, is at what point does the other person allow it to
yeah,
be the excuse? Like they're able to say, you're driving me crazy because of your ADHD stuff, as opposed to them having to look at like at what point is it their crutch? Like, listen, we have to deal with our brains every single day of our life. Must be really nice to sit back and have somebody go like, oh, ha ha ha, that's just your thing,
yeah.
or you'll never get over it. Like to me,
Well,
that says like I don't have to do the work too, because no matter the relationship, whether it's a partner of any kind or friendship, whatever, part of our jobs is to figure out how to support one another. And if you have to support your partner in certain ways because their brain works differently, then at least you have a pathway. You know it. It's like there to talk about. But to sort of diss it and say you're using it as an excuse, or,
mhm.
I'm resentful because of this, feels like one person is not taking into account the reality of something, of the way our brains work, that is real. It's science based.
Yeah,
It's real.
I think that's right. I think there needs to be, and I think it's difficult for the non-ADHD partner to accept the ADHD partner sometimes, because it can be, we sometimes do leave chaos in our wake, as far as like
Sure.
I mean, in our household right now, there are like several unfinished projects right now.
Right. And you feel bad about that. You don't want
Yeah.
that. And for you, it's like there's a slice, very thin slice of shame or like embarrassment,
Yeah.
right? So that plays into the non-ADHD partner whatever those comments are, they're taken differently. They're taken, sometimes they're
But
coming.
I also think that we're under the pressure of some weird American nonsense too, because this idea that there are households across this nation, I don't care who lives there, that don't have unfinished projects all over the place is
Of
crazy.
course, right.
Like, I think that we live in this world of like, oh, it's supposed to look like, television, households, or the what we're seeing is, on Instagram or whatever, but you don't see what's beyond this frame of this little square. And then like I appreciate so much the people who walk through their house and they're like, then unfinished there and unfinished, because I think that is actually normal. And we have been enculturated to think that we are not able to complete things when, which might be part of the truth too, but I just don't think it's as strange as it's made out to be. I think we take a big bulk of like guilt and shame over that nonsense when there are plenty of people who don't have shit. Oh my gosh, there's this person on TikTok. She is my favorite. It's my favorite new thing. I don't know her name, but she said she plays the game of I'm going to tell you how long I've been putting it off, and I'm going to tell you how long it takes to do it. And the thing that I find
I love that game
is that she's actually getting stuff done in her house because she's got to do TikTok content. I mean, it's like a brilliant ADHD hack, right? Like
that's a great hack.
But she'll literally go like, I have been putting off organizing these 2 drawers for the last 70 days. And then she does it, and she sort of puts it in fast motion. She goes, that took me 15 minutes.
Well, can I tell you something?
It's the most brilliant thing.
I was coming home from work today. I go a certain way to take my son home, drop him at his mother's house. Anyway, I don't go a certain way because there's been construction there and it's like one way. So there's a guy blocking the one way and it's busy right there. But my son assured me there wasn't that he didn't see any issue the last time. It's on Yale. Anyway, come around the corner, pull up. There's signs everywhere. It's a one-way situation. I'm like, see, you told me it was. I'm like, but you know what? Here's what I want you to do. When we come to a complete stop, I want you to set the timer and let's time how long it takes. It took 1.5 minutes. It took 1.5 minutes. And I said, did that just feel like 10 or 15 minutes? It was only 1.5 minutes. It's no big deal. I'm like, really? 1.5 minutes? I'm like, and I sort of,
is fascinating, isn't it?
It calmed my anxiety. And I said, I have nowhere to go, really. But I couldn't really, when you're in a rush, I wasn't in a rush, but traffic for me gets me pretty anxious no matter what.
Yeah.
I'm not even in a rush. I got nowhere to be.
But
But do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I also think
when you don't realize, like a red light, you're like, oh my God, this is the longest light. It's like 35 seconds.
I also think that there is a thing in America that we have been enculturated to that isn't contributing to this, and it's this idea of American exceptionalism. I think that in that space of trying to feel like we are exceptional and therefore we have to be perfect in certain ways, which is clearly not true for any of us, but we have this perception that we should be driving towards perfection, that things should be faster, better, cleaner, more organized, like at all times. Like I think we have put ourselves, or culturally, we are under a weight of something that is not true about humans. And in that we lose having grace for one another. Like, for example, I often don't have people over to my home, not because I don't want people in my home, but because no matter how much I clean or do something, it doesn't feel like it's good. I mean, my house is nice. It's fine. Like we live here, like it's lived in, but I don't feel like I have a space to share, and it's not about my actual space. It's about my viewpoint on what would have to be perfect enough for people to come in and hang out here. And unless you're really close to me, like I just don't do stuff here anymore. And that is nonsense. And it's something I'm working on and trying to get over. And we're actually looking at maybe having some, like, you guys will get invites, like artist nights in the summer, in the backyard, and hang out and play some music and whatever. But I believe this sense the American exceptionalism has driven us to places of being really out of touch with what living truly is and what grace with one another is.
Or yeah, and I think, Krista, yeah, and being comfortable in that space, like I think is what if
Yeah.
I believe is what you're saying too, right? Like just being okay and comfortable in that. That's taken me a long time to just be like, you know what? There are some things not done.
Yeah.
There are things that because I one of the ADHD curses is like the perpetual endless to-do list and the feeling of the need to be doing something
Right.
else.
And
Like,
I can't invite people over until that list is complete and done, which means no one will ever come over.
yeah, right. Like almost feeling uncomfortable talking, like, okay, I know I'm having this conversation right now, but there's so many things that I gotta be doing, so I'm not really at ease in this
Yeah.
moment,
Yeah.
like just present. And I think you're right. I think it is like, cultural. I do think there's technology plays a role in that as well, as far as the immediacy of things. Like we never wait for things anymore.
Yeah.
You always think about like the old, like where people would go into town. They live way out on a ranch or something, and we got a visitor coming up the road, or like, how long will that thing take to get here? And everything just happens in a blink of an eye, and it's really tricky to try to keep yourself at ease.
On just to make you feel better, Michael, because I don't know what projects you have going on, but about 6 weeks ago, the electricity went out in my bathroom and the kids' bathroom upstairs. We don't know what, just that working everywhere else, but it's super busy right now. So we are taking showers by candlelight. So I
That's
mean,
kind of cool.
it will get fixed at some point, but it's not being fixed right now. Yeah, because we're
You know,
just too busy. And the idea of having someone and listen, a neurotypical to be like, I'm just going to call the electrician. We're going to have it fixed. No, that's not how we are because that means bringing someone we don't know into our home, which is weird to us. So we got to figure that out. And we're so used to being able to fix things on our own, but neither of us want to die because electricity is a little harder to deal with. So we're just going to have a camping lantern in there for God knows how long. I actually, Michael, looked into those battery powered lights that you can just hang on things to buy instead of calling the electrician because that would mean a phone call to the electrician. And so when people say that this is not real, this condition, it's so real.
that is wonderful. And here's
I bet
like,
someone could make money by making phone calls for us.
yeah, like
Well,
just
that goes right back to your point. How long would I mean, if you're putting it off, the electrician, when it really is said and done and you give a call and they come out and fix it, like 10 minutes. You know what I mean? Like all that together, 10 minutes. You have to find the guy, come over, they fix it. That only took 10 minutes.
what I
But I
what I
understand.
what I love about this though is the you're this thing that becomes this given this experience that you don't even think about. You're just going and do it. Now it becomes this totally different experience. Like, oh, this is like look at the shadows in the bathroom and look at you're so present to your experience because it's so different than what you're used to. I think that's very cool. And then this is going to be like great. It's just great story fodder. And it's an experience you're having together, even though it's like connected to like maybe some of your neurodiverse ways of doing things. But like
Well, let's
it's
yeah,
it's
let's not even start
interesting.
talking about the door downstairs that one of the kids broke out the glass with a baseball bat when they were young. Now I've got a kid graduate, one of those kids graduating from high school, and we still have the wood over the window as opposed to
Oh, I've got a
replacing the
couple little
door.
situations like that. Little wood pieces. And you know what? I painted them a little like plywood in the garage, right? And what I've done is I painted them and when it's warm enough, I just take it down and set it aside. But it is so Fred Sanford, just like
So
whatever you can find in the backyard. I found a rock that I'm using here. You know what I'm like? Well, Michael knows.
It's
I just use
real.
whatever I have around.
I think the thing is it's real though. These things are real.
I'm gonna try to like,
I had a
uh,
cabinet fall off. Like there's a lazy, you know, the corner. Everyone has a corner where you open that kind of like double like door, and then there's like a lazy
Oh, yeah, I
Susan
have
for
one of these.
pots and stuff. The door broke
No,
several years ago.
there's a whole no.
It is
Oh no.
the
No, no,
door's
no, hold on. I
downstairs,
didn't want to hear it.
and I've
There's
and
there.
the hinge, I didn't tape it to the door. It's actually just that one hinge that came off is mysteriously made it around the house in weird places like, oh, there's that hinge. And then like, oh, that hinge goes to the
No,
door. They put it
I
back
can
to the
beat it.
door. Like,
There is a hole in the kids' bathroom that happened. The first 2 weeks we lived here, I was vacuuming, and when I vacuumed, it hit it hit the baseboard, and it was near a pipe, and somehow the nail from the baseboard went through and created a pinhole in the pipe. So we had to undo that. We had to make a hole in there to start to fix all that. So we did that. We did that on our own. That hole's still there. We've lived in this house for 18 years.
listen, I have a gutter with a hole in it right behind our bedroom, like right outside the window of our bedroom. And I thought I kind of fixed it, but you know, you got to get on a big ladder and stuff. And I thought I fixed it with some special, like, you know, it's waterproof and it goes in there, dries, whatever. I don't think I did. So the other night, it was pouring rain and mysterious sounds, mysterious sounds, mysterious sounds.
Oh,
And then I
yeah.
realized that thing's still dripping. It's been years the thing's dripping. I don't like, I'm not calling a guy. I
No,
tried one attempt to fix the
oh my
thing,
God.
but it just goes through the gutter and then it's just like a stream of water. I put a bucket under there and I like, I'll collect rainwater and use it in my garden. I mean,
That's
yeah.
it's
right.
so ridiculous. There's a Home Depot bucket under there, partially to hide the sound of it splashing on the concrete.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of, my husband just started the lawnmower.
There's probably a wrench up there too, by the way. You know what I'm saying?
Did
Well,
Tools.
so Michael is going to actually pull this together and say something real
yeah,
after
I'm
after
like
tangent.
just looking at time, and we have
Yeah.
a hard out for our
Yes.
friend
Yep.
Rudy here. I think as far as like we didn't like our group, we didn't get diagnosed until later in life, and I think it was very beneficial for us to get a better understanding of how our brain works. And it not only gave us room for some self-compassion and some self-awareness and openness to incorporate tools into our day-to-day, it also allowed us to express these things to our partners in different ways. Now, there's an adjustment period, right? And maybe some resistance to some things, but like overall, I think I've heard us all talking about how our partners have made these different adjustments and just kind of like as we're trying to kind of, as the dynamic kind of evolves into something that is ideally just a little bit more harmonious. And I think though, like so the diagnosis, I think, in my opinion, is crucial because for those reasons. I don't think if you know anybody who's neurodiverse, they're trying as hard as they can all the time, and they're going to be their own worst critic, believe me. So you don't have to worry about them like not, like uh, not taking something to heart. So I just
Well,
think that like, and in this last 5 minutes of just having some fun with how we experience the world and interact with the world. And I just loved that repair conversation. I just think
and
that kind of like,
I do want to say one thing to cap it off that I want to make clear because I did learn about me through my kid, right? And I will say in raising, and because about to graduate next week, unbelievably, and in the all of the years of education, what I fought for was accommodation, not excuse. So, and that is, I think, the way to think about
Yeah.
it is I
that's
don't
great.
think any of us are looking for excuses. We're saying we may have to get there differently. And
Yes,
that's
exactly.
Well
that's
said.
what it is. So,
That's the
um,
perfect note to go out on, I think.
there you go. Take us out, Michael
All
Collins.
right. Well, that was another exciting, wild and woolly This Is How My Brain Works episode. Please like, subscribe, and share. We're here. Um, we try to put one out every week, so please tune in. Thanks for watching and listening.
If you like this episode of This Is How My Brain Works, please like, subscribe, and share. If you'd like more info on the hosts, guests, and topics, check out the show notes. Thanks for listening.